He's back home where he belongs. He's Jonathan Roxmouth.
Welkom terug by die groot ontbyt. Ons selfs môre met die bekende skrywer, vervaardiger, akteur Jonathan Roxmouth en ons praat spesifiek oor sy spiksplinter nuwe vertoning My Favourite Broadway. Nou, ek dink jy kan jy het 'n idee waaroor die show gaan. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank
It's
you for
lovely having you here
Thank
this morning.
you. Thank you.
We are already a little bit, shall we say, mystified and getoer by what you've done, because there was a little bit of a sound check and already the tunes are in our head now. But let's start with your inspiration for My Favourite Broadway. Where did it come from? Where did it all start?
So it's very simple. I was away on tour for the last sort of year, doing the Phantom of the Opera all over the world, and nothing makes you miss South African audiences more than performing around the world.
Wow.
And I thought it would be nice to come home and sort of, I don't want to say have a homecoming of sorts, but like I missed the audiences and I missed singing musical theatre in South Africa, because I've been doing piano shows for the past 5 years, basically, not really musicals. The last musical I did was Evita, and that was 2017.
My goodness.
So I thought everything sort of came together that way, and it's worked out.
And this performance is as yourself, Jonathan Roxmouth.
Yes.
How does this differ from being on stage as yourself rather than a character that you normally portray?
So my job is weird. I get paid to pretend I'm someone else most of the time. You know, it's a weird thing. And I get to dress up in someone else's clothes and pretend I'm them for 2 hours every night. And then at the end of the show, you walk on stage and people clap for you. Wow, you pretended so well. It's the strangest job.
It is weird, yeah.
And the applause is nice. When you play yourself, it's a completely different engagement with the audience, because you're not pretending anymore. So there's instant access to you. And sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's not. And then at the end, they then clap for you for being yourself.
For being you.
And I figure if I'm going to have that weird interaction, I'd rather it be for me. And it's more terrifying, but it's more thrilling, because you're being authentic and you're being real.
It is slightly more terrifying because you're almost exposing yourself a little bit. You can't hide behind this mask.
There's no almost. You certainly are.
Yeah.
I mean, with Phantom, I wear a mask, and you know, it's easier in a way. Whereas now, I just talk to them as me, and then they come up to me afterwards, and they're like, "Wow, you're just like you were on stage," and I'm like, that was the point. So it's nerve-wracking, but it's really exciting, I think, as an artist, to play that role.
You've done quite a huge body of work, and you've done so many characters. But obviously you have a couple of big-time favourites. What can the audience expect in this specific show?
Every single one of those roles that I did at the Teatro. So essentially, you know, everything from Phantom is there. That was the big sort of turning point in a funny way. Suddenly I was a real actor once I did Phantom, but I'd been doing it for years before that.
Yeah.
But we've got Phantom, we've got Les Mis, obviously. We've got the classics, we've got My Fair Ladies in there as well. But when I realized that every big musical I've done took place at the Teatro, it made it the perfect place to do this. And we're even doing a sneak peek of a role that I haven't done yet in South Africa, but will be doing end of this year, because I'm coming back with Chicago. I'm playing Billy Flynn, the Richard Gere part from the movie, it's like the lawyer. So we're doing a special version of one of the songs in Chicago in the show as well, but in a way that you've never seen it before. So it's the best of all worlds. I mean, my mother always wanted me to be a criminal lawyer, because I live in Johannesburg, I won't run out of work, you know. But whereas here, I get to be a lawyer and do the theatre part, because South Africa doesn't have a jury system.
Yes.
Or as I call it, the audience. Whereas playing a lawyer in a musical, kind of best of all worlds.
Perfect. You are basically in law, just the audience is the jury. Yeah.
Exactly, and they will have a judgment at the end of the show.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier your deep connection with musical theatre, but this is so different. How would you want to expand that relationship and connection with your audience in this specific show?
Well, I believe that everybody who has a favourite song from a musical has a memory attached to that song. And they have that favourite show, but you have to sit through a lot of stuff to get to that song. This is an evening of all of those songs, so there's no waiting. It's about memory, it's about nostalgia, it's about sharing certain stories about certain songs or feelings and that, but also being vulnerable through songs that now mean something completely different to me at 38 compared to when I was 23 singing them for the first time. You know, Music of the Night, for instance, is the most amazing way to tell somebody that you love them. At 38, having had loves and heartbreaks and everything, it's a completely different song to me now. So the songs will show the audience even more, who I am now, which is a wonderful way of doing things.
Where did your love for the musicals come from?
I was one of those kids that when I first heard the musicals, because when I was growing up, we didn't have YouTube. You didn't know what these musicals looked like. I had CDs. And, original Broadway cast recording was just a phrase to me. Broadway's not a thing, it's just a word. So now that I've actually been to New York and I've seen what Broadway is and I understand what a Broadway musical actually means, I have my favorite Broadway musicals. So that all sort of came together because it started out purely as a fascination. I'd never heard anything like this before. So I filled it in my head, what I thought it might look like. And so now I get to do a show with an orchestra, singing that music without showing the audience, letting them hear what it is, the way I did back then that inspired me to do this as a living. And it all sort of comes together in a way that you get to experience what I experienced as a chubby kid in Fontainebleau, in the early 90s, learning about this stuff and being inspired by this stuff. And now I get to do it with 32 musicians on the biggest stage in South Africa.
That's lovely.
I mean, that's nuts.
So.
Why is theatre in South Africa so special and so important that we actually give more credit to our performers and theatre in general?
It can always go wrong. If you watch TV or film, whatever you play will be exactly the same every single time. With the theatre, it's like an extreme sport. You can be as consistent as you like, but there's always going to be human variation.
Yes. The risk is always there.
Exactly. It's like an extreme sport. Every time an audience sees a show, no matter how consistent or professional you are, it'll always be different. It's always a bespoke experience, requiring that audience's energy during that performance, because it's back and forth all the time. It's like tennis,
Yes.
And every time you're in a theatre, it'll never be that way ever again. So it's a special experience every time. That is important because South African audiences are reminded that you have to put the phone down and actually engage and not watch theatre as if it's TV or film.
Be in the moments.
And they actually engage with each other. And that's the amazing thing. You start as strangers, and after 2.5 hours, we're sort of very good acquaintances in a funny way.
Yeah.
Would it be unfair to ask you what your favourite musical is?
No. There's two answers. The first is, I have to say, it will always be Phantom.
Okay.
Because it divided my career into before and after. But I'm now in the phase of my life where my favourite musical, I'd like to think, hasn't been written yet. And I have to meet the composer first, and they'll go, "You're who we've been waiting for." And that'll become my favourite show.
That is amazing. And that also leads to my last question. Next. What is next? I mean, yes, there is this lovely show that we are now talking about and that we're going to listen to now. But what's next?
Well, as I said, I'm going into Chicago. So in 2018, I did Chicago all around China and all around New Zealand, but not South Africa. This time around, I get to come back to that role, again, 7 years later, having never done a musical in South Africa in that time. And the last time audiences saw me, I was doing Che in Evita, so beard and army fatigues. This time, I get to do it with a very, very sexy ensemble. I get to wear a beautiful tuxedo. I get the whole band on stage with me. As Billy Flynn, the slick, conniving, but quite charming lawyer. And essentially, I'm going to be fulfilling my mother's dream and mine at the same time in Chicago at the Theatre and at the Artscape in Cape Town. So it's kind of the best of all worlds.
So much to look forward to. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and sharing your passion and inspiration and your talent with us.
Thank you. Well, we'll see about that. It's early.
It is indeed. Wat 'n lekker voorreg om met Jonathan te gesels. We're going to be listening to something now and we can't wait. Jonathan gaan vir ons hier op die lang masjien speel. En bly net daar waar jy is. Onthou, ons gee nog kaartjies weg na die show toe, nê? 3 stelletjies kaartjies wat ons weggee. Ek hoop jy het ge-SMS. Ons gaan net nou nadat dit nie breek sommer die wenners daarvan ook aankondig. Maar ja, onthou, kaartjies vir My Broadway is nou beskikbaar by webtickets.co.za.
He's back home where he belongs. He's Jonathan Roxmouth.